Facebook versus Buddhism.
There are slightly more social media users than monotheists. The most popular god in the world is less popular than social media. That's wild. We have created this digital self on top of the real self that's permanent and pretends that it's not suffering. This is the religious structure of social media.
Change your life on purpose.
Greetings, humans. This is Pasajai. I'm Nathan. This is
Change your life on purpose,
where we talk about psychology, philosophy, media studies, religion, and we steal these ideas for the purpose of trying to
change your life on purpose.
Today, the topic is the religious structure of social media. Is social media giving us an ideology to replace the ideologies that we're paying less attention to as science takes over more of the, answering life questions for us, right? So let's look at religion. We see some projections here that the monotheisms are growing. This is Christianity and Islam. By 2060, we have some projections that maybe 60% of people are going to be monotheistic, right? And also, if we look here, we see that the largest number I was able to find is the Christians with 2.3 billion, and this is about 10 years ago. It's 2025 when I'm making this video. And Muslims are not far behind with 1.8 billion. I found another statistic that chops them up a little bit more. We have a Sunni Muslim majority with 1.5 billion. And then here we have Sunni and Shia are separated. And here we have Catholics and Protestants separated. But we still have a Christian majority by 2022, according to these predictions. Today, I will be giving us a comparison between social media and Buddhism, particularly Theravada Buddhism, just because it's the thing that I've studied the most recently, and also it does not require any faith claims in order to believe any of the ideas that I'm going to say. They're ideas that kind of generally make logical sense without any kind of metaphysics. Metaphysics means something that's beyond the nature that we can kind of figure out with our senses and our mathematics. Metaphysics, beyond physics, right? Okay. So is social media replacing religion? This would be a huge argument to make that would take a lot of time. What do you think? Argue with me in the comments. Back in the day, people used to go to church on Sundays, right? And maybe they pray before they go to bed. Maybe they read the Bible a little bit. Maybe people who meditate, they call that religion. Muslims pray 5 times per day, right? So we have this commitment to religion. We attend religious rituals and stuff as a people. They're not going away so much. But how much do you spend on your screen time? Look up your screen time. It's insane. It's many, many, many hours engaging in this way of being with the world that is social media, where you are watching other people live their lives. You're presenting the way that you're living your life. You're existing in the world as a user of social media, right? I mean, you found me on YouTube or whatever, right? We're all doing this together. What is this thing that we're doing? And is it in some way replacing religion? Think about it. I wonder what you think, right? Numbers-wise, yeah, it's more popular than any of the religions because Facebook has crossed the 3 billion mark, and that's more than any religion, no matter how you cut it up. The largest social media network in the world has more followers than the largest religion in the world does. And it's not the only one, right? You also have Instagram, which has now crossed the 2 billion mark, right? Some people are partaking in both. You can't be a Muslim and a Christian at the same time, but you can be on Instagram and Facebook at the same time, right? So this is not a pure comparison. TikTok cracked 1 billion faster than either of the other two did. Between 50 and 60% of people are social media users, right? Regular users of social media would be 50 to 60%, because remember, we have Chinese social networks that don't have as much overlap with the Western ecosystem, right? So, yes, the majority of people subscribe to these monotheisms: Islam, Christianity, Judaism. They all are people of the book. They all go back to the same books. They all go back to the same God, right? But social media, there are slightly more social media users than monotheists, right? The most popular God in the world is less popular than social media. That's wild. So here we have kind of a comprehensive view of all of these social networks. And, this is in millions. So this 3,000 means 3 billion, right? Which we saw before. So that's a lot of believers. That's a lot of followers. And what I want to do today is look at what we believe when we are engaging in social media use. And I'll give us a comparison with Buddhism. So this question of, is social media replacing religion, is an interesting question. But what I want to talk about is the religious structure of social media in general. And my way of doing it will be Facebook versus Buddhism, right? I have most recently studied Buddhism, and I can present the 3 marks of existence of Buddhism without asking you to believe in anything, right? Okay, so the 3 marks of existence, as I said, there are a lot of lists in Buddhism. There's like the 4 Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path. There's all the links and the chains of existence and everything. We won't go into any of that. We're just going to look at the 3 marks of existence. And that's basically saying, okay, if you take Buddhism as a philosophy that you put onto your eyes and try to see the world, what is existence made of, right? And Buddhism gives us 3 answers. It's anicca, or in Thai is anichang, and this means impermanence in general. Dukkha, and dukkha, this is the Sanskrit. In Thai we say tuk, and this is basically the idea that all human lives have suffering, right? My human life has suffering. Your human life has suffering. Even Mark Zuckerberg, with all of his money and fame, he still experiences suffering. We all experience suffering. Every human being suffers, right? It's the first truth of the 4 Noble Truths. The last one would be anatta, no self. And this is kind of the most complicated, and I'll do my best to explain it. But if that one doesn't make sense, don't feel bad. This is the hardest one to make sense of, rather famously. First, anicca, impermanence. This one is very easy to understand, and it's not, science doesn't even disagree with this one. So this is a sad one. But we're all going to die. Every person that's around is going to die. All of our stuff, no matter how long lasting, it's all going to break and at some point decompose. Even the sun will someday burn out. And as physics becomes more of a complete project, we start to see that it's very possible that the universe has an expiration date and will someday burn out. There will be a heat death of the universe, which means that the heat will run out and there will be kind of like everything will be sort of frozen in an absolute zero, right? This is rather sad, but it's also something that we need to be reminded of. Memento mori in Stoicism reminds you to understand that life is fleeting, right? And so that you can drink more deeply of it, right? So impermanence, science has nothing to say against this, right? Except for a few maybes that we could talk about, and we'll talk about those another time. So anicca, impermanence, reminds us that everything has some sort of expiration date. Dukkha, suffering, right? I already basically explained it. All human beings are suffering. Even multimillionaires with supercars and really beautiful seeming lives are still experiencing suffering. We are reminded of this when people like Anthony Bourdain, Chester Bennington, Amy Winehouse, all of these people who are just loved and respected for just being themselves will end up taking their own lives because they are having such a hard time dealing with the suffering in their lives, right? Human beings are suffering. This is the first noble truth of Buddhism. third mark of existence is no self. And this one is the hardest to understand. So I'm going to break it down into two ways. I'll choose space and time. And if this doesn't make sense, don't worry. Number one would be space. So let's say you're in a room and you're looking out at the room, right? Light is bouncing around in the room off of the walls and everything, and it's bouncing into your retina, and it's turning into neural signals that go into your brain, and then your brain creates a visual reality, and you're reaching out into this visual reality, and you can see it, right? That is being created by you. In this way, the room is you. The room is you, right? And this is something that some meditation traditions will tell you to try to be like, hey, just realize that the room is you. And then you'll be like, huh? Wait, let me try to grasp that. And when you do try to grasp that, you'll get a moment of kind of an epiphany, a short euphoria, a little quick awakening. And once you get that, you're like, oh, that's a little breath of enlightenment. This is a very mini enlightenment, right? And this is kind of a moment where you experience no self, right? And we know that suffering is often related to a feeling of selfhood and be like, why does this happen to me? My things, I want to keep my things, me, right? But we usually will feel better when we're thinking about selflessness and giving, right? This usually makes people feel better. As people develop in their life, they might have like plenty of money and nice relationships and, you know, like all the things that they thought they would want. But as they become adults, they become like depressed and hollow feeling for whatever reason. And one of the things that the research is telling us is that if we're not like feeling that we're giving, that feeling that we're not giving creates a depression in adults. Like if you're a young person, you just need to build yourself, right? But if you're an older person, you're already established and you're like, man, what's going on? Why do I not feel great? It's often because we get too wound up on satisfying the things that we want, realizing that you're kind of on a treadmill trying to satisfy what you want, right? And you could start to feel the Buddhism from just these three things having an interplay. And it doesn't really ask you to believe anything, right? It just says, here are these three parts of existence. Paying attention to these in this way does Buddhism. And that's, you don't need much more, right? Okay. So these are basically the three marks of existence, and they have a lot of relationships between each other. So like we suffer because we don't remember that everything is impermanent, right? And when things are slipping away from us, we suffer because we thought that they would be around forever. And things will not be around forever. Oh no, why didn't I appreciate that while it was here? Well, it was because I didn't have a good enough grasp of anicca, right? I wasn't reminding myself often enough of that. And then anatta, no self, right? The more we found the default mode network, and often the default mode network has an association with suffering. So why do we suffer? Often because we are so just welded to this sense of self. Furthermore, emotions and things that'll happen for short periods of time, we feel like they are us. I am anger, right? No, anger is arising, and then anger goes away. And I'll go back to no self for a moment. I promised you space and time. So space, right? You look around at space, and you realize that the universe is actually something you're creating. Your phenomenal field of vision and everything, that's something you're creating, and you're a part of that. Your separation from it doesn't actually make sense. You can do the same thing kind of with humanity. You know, where did I get my coffee today? Where did I get my water? There's this humanity project that we're all a part of. I wouldn't be anything like myself without being able to do that. If I become able to do this for a living, like it'll be because of you, right? We don't do anything alone. We're all part of this interconnected web, right? Okay. Time, right? So with time, you can very easily look back on, let's say, being a kid, and you think about the things that you thought when you were a kid, the things that you wanted when you were a kid, and realize that like the things that you think now and the things that you want now, you wouldn't really be able to have a very good conversation with that kid and agree on very much at all. When I teach in universities, I'll usually tell my 20-year-old students, hey, could you have a conversation with yourself when you're like, 17? And the answer is probably yes. But then or 16, let's say, 20 back to 16. But the 16-year-old talking to the 12-year-old self, you're on a completely different wavelength, because when you're 12, it's like right before you really start to care what other people think of you, right? When you're 16, you really care what other people think of you, really care, right? It's like defining you. When you're 12, somebody's like, I don't like you. You're like, yeah, whatever. You'll probably like me on Wednesday when we're going to have football practice. And then sure enough, you have football practice and whoever you were fighting with likes you again, right? So over time, we become different people for sure, right? Your emotion. I was playing a show last night. And as the sun set, the mosquitoes came out. These mosquitoes started to like destroy me while I was trying to play and sing my songs. And I was getting super angry, right? And then I stopped and took a break, right? And figured out how to get a fan on me. And once I got a fan on me, I was no longer getting destroyed by mosquitoes and I was all right, right? But myself during the mosquito attack and after the mosquito attack was a completely different self, right? Because I was totally in the grips of these very negative emotions. And then I was like playing music with a fan on me and I'm like, oh, now nothing can bite me and I'm free. This is wonderful. I live in a tropical place with malaria, right? So it's not an irrational fear. So that's the 3 marks of existence. They play with each other in order to create suffering, and that's why suffering is the first noble truth, right? Because Buddhism tries to say, hey, the first noble truth is suffering. That's the thing we should be working on, right? So let's work on it. And then Buddhism proceeds from there, right? Okay. What about social media, right? What about Meta? What about Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? What about all of social media? Anicca is impermanence, but in social media land, things are permanent. I'm going to upload this video and it's going to go out there. And if somebody else ever makes a copy of it, which you can easily do, YouTube Ripper, right? Then it's out there forever. And if I said something offensive, I have said something offensive forever, right? If you're texting somebody and you text something mean to that person, you have texted that person something mean forever. You could be in an argument with somebody, but I never said that. Scroll up and you'll see that you did say that. And I'm never going to forget it. I mean, I would like to forget it because forgiving and forgetting have something to do with one another sometimes, right? Is it wisdom to never, ever, ever forget? Or are there things we want to forget? You didn't mean what you said, so I don't need to look at it forever, right? But in this digital world that we've created on top of the real world that we're all in all the time, the first mark of existence is permanence, right? You're that forever. If you're 18 years old and you make a bunch of videos where you say things that you really believe and think, and then you grow up and you're 23 and you don't believe any of those things anymore, well, you have professed your beliefs on the internet now. How can you change? And if you change, are you contradicting yourself? What self, right? And then we're skipping ahead to anatta, aren't we? Right? So I'll put them all up there. Dukkha, right? Life for all people is suffering, but famously on Instagram, on Facebook, we are just depicting ourselves in our moments of triumph. Right? When you do something good, you put it up there. When you're happy, you put it up there. And so famously, everybody's in this infinite scroll and looking around at everybody's lives. You see only the highlights of everybody's life. And so the assumption is everyone's life is happy. Well, Buddhism is telling us everyone is experiencing suffering, and this should make us feel more empathy towards each other. Metta, karuna, mudita, right? These are the virtues that arise from recognizing the suffering in yourself and the suffering in other people. But in social media land, we have no suffering. Now, nothing is 100%. People do put their suffering online, but it's usually not very well received, right? And I mean, since social media is a layer of reality we've laid on top of reality, that's not even so true anymore. It's really a place that's very real, and people will be like, I'm in a crisis, please help me. This is the best way that I can get my message out to you, right? So we do see some degree of suffering on social media, but only when people are in genuine crises. Okay. Last one, no self becomes all self, right? And the way I see this is, if you have a social media profile, it's not our profile, it's your profile. Always yours, your own profile, right? This is the cult of I. You would never give your internal, screen world over to somebody else and be like, yeah, here, I'm going to unlock my phone and go take a poop. And you just go do whatever you want in my phone, right? Nobody wants to do that, because somebody could post as you and say something permanent and damaging, right? We have created this digital self on top of the real self that's permanent and pretends that it's not suffering. This is the religious structure of social media. And it is completely opposed to the religious structure of Buddhism. Everything that Buddhism is telling you to think, social media is trying to tell you to think the opposite of this. What are the consequences of that? Find out. That's your reality, right? So if you want to dig into this kind of thing, I have a 12-week course called
Change Your Life on Purpose.
Week 4 is the deep dive into technology. There's a theory lecture that covers a lot of books about technology, and we will write like a digital manifesto to try to reclaim the goodness in our technological behaviors, right? So the whole course is basically about changing your life on purpose. Our lives change all the time because of circumstances. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to change your life yourself under your own power? Hit up the link in the description if you are down with that, and I will see you on the other side.
Peace.